She was a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, and a cold-hearted killer. The very family that attempted to give her a better life were repaid in blood. The unspeakable acts that she carried out against members of her own family can make even more seasoned killers look meek. What happened to make a 14-year-old girl with seemingly her whole life ahead of her turn into a ruthless murderer? Hello, my name is Amina, and welcome back to another episode of Crime Addictz. In today's video, we will look into the case of Ashley Jones, who, along with her boyfriend Jeremy Hart, savagely murdered her grandfather and aunt and attempted to kill both her grandmother and her 10-year-old sister. But first, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be alerted when I post a new video. Also, follow Crime Addictz on Instagram and TikTok, where I only post stories that I have not covered on YouTube. Alright, now let's get back to the video. Ashley Jones was born in the mid-1980s in Birmingham, Alabama. She was raised by a drug-addicted mother and an abusive father. As a child, Ashley and her younger sister often witnessed verbal and physical abuse by her father against her mother, and she was also physically assaulted as well. During one such altercation, her father allegedly fired a gun at Ashley, her mother, and her sister when her mother got in the car and attempted to drive away. Being raised in such a hostile environment, she attempted to make friends at school and within her neighborhood, but her small frame and speech impairment made it hard for her to fit in with kids her age, and she was often made fun of and picked on. This left her depressed, traumatized, and suicidal. At age 10, Ashley tried to kill herself by jumping out of a window. And at 11, she was hospitalized for seizures due to an overdose. Her mother had left her father and remarried, only for her stepfather to sexually assault her. By 13, she overdosed again and was admitted into Children's Hospital in Birmingham. At this point, she had been in juvenile court, the county child welfare system, and at least one treatment program. In 1998, Ashley met 15-year-old Jeremy Hart, a boy from her neighborhood, at a party. He was instantly attracted to her, and she to him. Jeremy was a bit of a loner and had a reputation of being confrontational within the community. He had a child from a previous relationship and often boasted about being in a gang and would carry weapons to intimidate people. Ashley was intrigued with this boy because he not only commanded respect, but instilled fear in people. And best of all, he seemed to genuinely want to protect her. They solidified their bond by confiding in each other and connected on a deeper level by talking on the phone for all hours of the day and night. Ashley would even sneak out of the house to see him and would eventually lose her virginity to Jeremy. However, their fairy tale was cut short soon afterwards when Ashley stabbed her biological father, claiming that he threatened to kill her and her sister. Not long after that, she stabbed her mother during an argument, although her mother was 8 months pregnant at the time. Following these incidents, Ashley was sent to a mental institution, and after her release, she was sent to live with her grandparents, DeRoy and Mary Nalls. DeRoy Nalls, aka Deacon Nalls, was a 78-year-old retired steelworker and deacon at Hayes Chapel Baptist Church. He advocated for full custody of Ashley and her sister Mary because he didn't want his grandchildren to be awarded the state and didn't want them in foster care. His wife of 53 years, retired social worker Mary Nalls, shared a similar sentiment. Although they knew Ashley had a reputation of being a problem child, they both believed if they showered her with love, raised her in a safe environment, and introduced her to the teachings of the Bible, then maybe she would start to make better decisions in her future. Roy and Mary weren't strangers to raising children with mental health and behavioral issues. Their daughter and Ashley's aunt, Millie Nalls, was a violent schizophrenic. Allegedly, she even attempted to scald Ashley and her sister Mary once with hot water. These incidents would often result in her being institutionalized for a few weeks until she was stabilized, then released. Because of her sporadic behaviors and being a danger to herself and others, Millie, at 30 years old, continued to live with her parents. Unfortunately, the Nalls weren't aware of Ashley's relationship with Jeremy before they took her in, and once they found out, it was too late. Her grandfather, Roy, became upset after finding out that Ashley was dating Jeremy and forbade her from seeing him. He would ban Jeremy from coming around the house or contacting Ashley, and when Jeremy still did it anyway, Roy would contact the police, saying that Ashley was underage and threatened to have Jeremy arrested. None of this discouraged either Jeremy or Ashley, and they continued to hook up in secret. It wasn't until Roy put Ashley on punishment for staying out late one night that it was the last straw. Late in the evening, on August 29th, 1999, Roy was in the den watching television. After being snuck in the house by Ashley and carrying one of the 2 guns she stole from her grandfather, Jeremy entered the den and immediately shot Roy twice in the face. He and Ashley then headed down the hall and entered Ashley's aunt Millie's room and shot her 3 times. Seeing that Millie was still moving and making noises, they began to hit her with portable heaters over the head and stabbed her in the chest until she coughed up blood. The murdering duo next entered Ashley's grandmother's bedroom, and Jeremy fired the last bullet from the gun into her shoulder. Since they had run out of ammo, Ashley took a knife and repeatedly stabbed her grandmother. The pair then returned to the front, where Ashley's grandfather was, and found him moaning and stumbling, trying to flee the house. Jeremy began to hit him with various objects lying around, and then proceeded to stab him repeatedly, leaving the knife in his bag. If that wasn't enough, Ashley picked up a bottle of lighter fluid, poured it over her grandfather, and set him on fire. Hearing the commotion, Ashley's 10-year-old sister got up and walked to the front of the house, only to be gripped up by Ashley and dragged into the kitchen area. As Ashley's sister watched, Jeremy forced Roy to disclose where he kept his money, and after Mr. Nalls complied, Jeremy stabbed him in the throat. Ashley's grandmother, who was bleeding from the gunshot and stab wound she received, stumbled into the kitchen calling out to her husband. Ashley responded by pouring lighter fluid on her and setting her on fire as well. They watched Mrs. Nalls burn, and Jeremy urged Ashley to pour more of the flammable liquid on her. Ashley's little sister, who was forced to witness this horrendous sight, attempted to leave the kitchen, but Ashley grabbed her and began to hit her. Jeremy pointed a gun at the 10-year-old and said, "This is how you're going to die." But Ashley excitedly interjected, saying, "No, let me do it," and proceeded to stab her sister 14 times. Afterwards, Jeremy and Ashley took $300 that was hidden beneath Roy and Mary's mattress and stole her grandfather's car keys. Assuming that everyone was deceased, they piled sheets, towels, and paper on the floor and set the pile on fire in an attempt to burn the house down and drove away in the stolen vehicle. 10-year-old Mary Jones, who had pretended to be dead, got up and was able to get herself and her grandmother out of the house to get help. She was able to flag down a passing motorist who contacted the police. The crime scene was chaotic, and a strong smell of both blood and charcoal fluid welcomed the detectives as they entered the house. Mr. Nalls was found lying on his right side on the floor in the den, with the bent shaft of an umbrella by his side. On the counter, detectives located a revolver and a large knife. They also saw the telephone line had been cut. They pronounced Ashley's Aunt Millie dead on arrival after discovering her shot and beaten body still in her bed. Ashley and Jeremy, who had fled and got in a hotel room, were arrested the next day after the Nalls' vehicle was spotted in the hotel's parking lot. They both were charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. During her interrogation, Ashley seemed more concerned about Jeremy than herself. She begged the detectives to allow her to see him, and when they wouldn't comply, she asked if they could let him know that she loved him. Meanwhile, Ashley's grandmother and sister were in the hospital recovering from the tragic assault. 10-year-old Mary received stitches for her numerous stab wounds and was hospitalized with a collapsed lung. Mrs. Nalls was treated for the gunshot and stab wounds, as well as the burns that covered a third of her body. She spent a month in the burn unit of a local hospital, undergoing multiple skin grafts before receiving rehabilitative therapy to relearn how to use her arms. The coroner determined that DeRoy and Millie Nalls died from the stab and gunshot wounds that they sustained. He testified that both victims suffered greatly from their wounds before they died. At Ashley's trial, the defense painted a picture of abuse and neglect. The hope was that Ashley could be found not guilty by reason of insanity. A psychiatrist stated that Ashley Jones suffered from undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic and severe depression, paranoia, and possible schizophrenia. Ashley's grandmother also testified at her trial. She said that although her granddaughter had taken her husband and daughter's life and attempted to take her own, she had forgiven Ashley and believed that life in prison was not an appropriate sentence for the 14-year-old. She even hugged Ashley after giving this testimony to a packed courtroom. However, the judge and jury did not agree, and both Ashley and Jeremy were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So this marks the end of this video. Please comment below and let me know what you think about this tragic case. I also would like to know if you feel as though justice was served in this trial when it comes to Ashley and Jeremy's sentences. Even though they did commit a heinous crime, they were both teenagers when it happened. But I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on it. As always, I appreciate you for listening. Please like, comment, share. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I look forward to seeing you guys at the next video. Talk to you soon. All right, take care. Bye.